My billionaire father-in-law mocked my startup at every turn, so when I revealed what I'd built, his power game shattered in front of everyone. My name is Alexander Foster, though the society pages prefer Sarah Sterling's husband or Richard Sterling's son-in-law. At 32, I built quantum solutions from the ground up, turning my coding expertise into a growing enterprise. But to Richard, I would always be the scholarship kid who somehow convinced his daughter to marry down. "Dad, please," Sarah interjected, appearing at my side with the perfect timing she'd developed over our 5 years of marriage. "It's your birthday party. Let's not talk business." Richard waved his hand dismissively. "I'm trying to help him, Princess. Someone needs to show him how the real world works." He turned back to me, eyes sharp despite the champagne he'd been drinking. "The offer to join Sterling Enterprises still stands. We could use someone in IT." It was as if what I did was the same as fixing printer problems. I opened my mouth to respond, but Sarah's gentle squeeze of my arm stopped me. We'd had this conversation before. Richard Sterling didn't listen to explanations or facts. He only respected one thing: power. "Thank you, but I'm happy where I am," I said instead, raising my glass in a mock toast. "Your loss," Richard shrugged, already turning away to greet another guest. "Just don't come crying to me when your little startup fails." As he walked away, Sarah leaned close. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You know how he gets at these events." I did know. Every family gathering was an opportunity for Richard to remind me of my place in his world, somewhere far below him. The fact that Sarah had chosen to marry a computer nerd instead of the hedge fund manager he'd picked out for her still rankled him 4 years later. "It's fine," I assured her, though we both knew it wasn't. "Go mingle. Your mother's been trying to catch your eye for the last 5 minutes." Sarah hesitated, torn between supporting me and fulfilling her social obligations. "Are you sure?" "Go," I smiled. "I need to check some emails, anyway." She kissed my cheek and moved away, instantly transforming into the perfect socialite daughter her parents had raised. I watched her go, marveling at how easily she navigated both worlds, my small but growing tech company and her father's billion-dollar empire. Finding a quiet corner of the terrace, I pulled out my phone. There were several messages from Marcus, my lead developer, all marked urgent. "Boss, you need to see this. Google just responded to our proposal." My heart skipped a beat. We'd been in talks with Google's cloud division for months, a potential contract that would change everything. With trembling fingers, I opened the attached document. As I read, the sounds of Richard's lavish party faded away. The contract terms were beyond what we'd hoped for. Google wasn't just interested in our security protocol, they wanted to integrate it across their entire cloud platform. "Call me a sap," I texted Marcus. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. "This is real, right?" I asked, as soon as he picked up. "You verified everything?" "Triple-checked," Marcus confirmed. "Their legal team sent over the preliminary contracts an hour ago. They want to fast-track the integration, Alex. This is big. Like, really big." I leaned against the terrace railing, letting the cool evening air wash over me. "What's the timeline?" "They want to announce next week. Full press release, joint statement, the works. You'll need to fly out to Mountain View to sign the final papers." I ran a hand through my hair. "That's fast." "That's Google," Marcus laughed. "When they want something, they move quick. Oh, and there's more. Apple's team reached out right after. Apparently, word got out about the Google deal. They want to discuss potential collaboration." I closed my eyes, thinking of Richard's condescending smile. Small-time stuff, he'd called it. "Send me everything," I said. "And Marcus, great work. Thanks, boss. Want me to start on the Apple proposal?" "Not yet. Let's keep that quiet for now. I have a feeling the next few days are going to be interesting." Ending the call, I looked back at the party. Richard was holding court near the pool, gesturing grandly as he told one of his famous business war stories, the same ones he'd been using for years to remind everyone of his genius. Sarah caught my eye from across the terrace, raising an eyebrow in question. I gave her a small nod, our private signal that everything was okay. More than okay, in fact. "Alex," Richard's voice cut through my thoughts. "Stop hiding with your phone and join us. Howard here was just asking about your, app business." Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the group. Howard Turner, another tech-illiterate billionaire, peered at me through expensive glasses. "Richard tells me you do something with computers," he said, clearly making an effort to sound interested. "Cybersecurity," I corrected politely. "We develop advanced protection protocols for cloud-based systems." "Ah," Howard nodded, already losing interest. Richard laughed. "Alex here thinks he's going to revolutionize the industry. Keeps talking about neural networks and artificial intelligence." He turned to me, eyes glinting. "How many employees do you have now? 10, 15? 28, I said. "We're actually planning to expand soon." 28, Richard announced to the group. "Meanwhile, Sterling Enterprises just opened our Tokyo office." "What are we at now, Thompson?" He looked at his CFO. "Over 10,000 employees worldwide, sir," Thompson supplied dutifully. "That's real business," Richard declared, raising his glass. "Scale, gentlemen. That's what separates the players from the pretenders." The sycophants around him nodded in agreement. I noticed Sarah watching from nearby, her face tight with suppressed anger. She hated when her father did this, but we both knew confronting him would only make things worse. "Actually," I said, surprising myself with my calm tone, "we're quite happy with our current size. It allows us to stay innovative, adapt quickly to market changes." Richard's smile turned patronizing. Of course. Nothing wrong with staying small. Someone has to handle the little jobs." He turned to the group. "Did I ever tell you about the time I acquired Pacific Steel? Now that was a deal." I tuned out his story. I'd heard it at least a dozen times before, and checked my phone again. Marcus had sent over the preliminary contracts. The numbers made me blink. Google wasn't just buying our security protocol, they were valuing it at nearly $1 billion. A hand touched my arm, and I looked up to find Sarah beside me. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. "You've been glued to your phone all evening." I glanced at Richard, still holding forth about his brilliant business acumen, then back at my wife. "Remember how you said I should wait for the perfect moment to prove him wrong?" She nodded, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "I think that moment's coming soon." Before she could ask more questions, Richard's voice rose again. "Alex, put that damn phone away. It's my birthday, for God's sake. Show some respect." I slipped the phone into my pocket, remembering Sarah's constant advice, patience. The right moment would come. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations. While Richard's birthday celebration dominated the social pages, Tech Titan's magnificent milestone, my team and I worked around the clock finalizing details with Google's legal team. Sarah knew something was happening but didn't press for details. She understood the importance of timing, especially when it came to her father. "Just promise me you'll record his reaction," she said one evening as we got ready for bed, "whatever it is you're planning." I kissed her forehead. "You'll have a front row seat." The following Wednesday, Richard summoned us to a family dinner at his penthouse. These dinners were regular events, opportunities for him to remind everyone of their place in his carefully ordered world. "Bring your appetite," he texted, and "Alex, try to dress appropriately this time. No startup casual." Sarah rolled her eyes when I showed her the message. One of these days, he's going to realize that Mark Zuckerberg changed the rules about business attire. I adjusted my tie, Hermes, a gift from Sarah, and smiled. Maybe sooner than he thinks. The elevator ride to Richard's penthouse was silent, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Sarah was worrying her lower lip, a sure sign she was nervous about something. "What is it?" I asked. She sighed. "Dad's been meeting with venture capitalists lately. I overheard Mom talking about it. I think he's planning to launch his own tech division." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? He keeps talking about showing Silicon Valley upstarts how real business is done." She touched my arm. "Just be careful, okay? When Dad feels threatened, he can be ruthless." I covered her hand with mine. "Trust me." The doors opened directly into Richard's magnificent foyer, where Thompson, ever the loyal CFO, was waiting to greet us. "Miss Sarah, Mr. Foster?" He nodded. "Mr. Sterling is in his study. He'd like a word with Alex before dinner." Sarah squeezed my hand before heading toward the dining room. I followed Thompson down the hallway, each step muffled by priceless Persian carpets. Richard's study was designed to intimidate, all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he considered his personal kingdom. He stood at the window, silhouetted against the sunset, deliberately making me wait. "Alex," he finally said, not turning around. "Have a seat." I remained standing. "You wanted to see me?" He turned then, a familiar smirk playing at his lips. "I've been thinking about your situation." He motioned for Thompson to leave us. Once we were alone, Richard settled into his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "I'm going to make you an offer, Alex. A generous one, considering the circumstances." "Oh?" He pushed a folder across his desk. "Sterling Enterprises is launching a new division, Sterling Tech. We're acquiring promising startups, building a real presence in the digital space." His emphasis on real was unmistakable. "I'm prepared to offer you a position as a junior VP and will absorb whatever assets your little company has." I didn't touch the folder. "And if I'm not interested?" Richard's smile turned cold. "Then you should know I've been talking to some very interesting people. People who might be willing to compete directly with whatever services you're offering. With proper funding, of course." "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" He laughed. No, just having a father-son chat, looking out for your best interests." He leaned forward. "The tech world isn't like other businesses, Alex. It's cutthroat. A small operation like yours? Well, accidents happen. Systems fail. Clients lose confidence." I felt a surge of anger but kept my voice steady. "I'll think about it. Don't think too long," Richard warned. "This offer expires in 48 hours. He stood, straightening his custom suit. "Now let's join the ladies for dinner. And Alex," his eyes glittered, "not a word of this to Sarah. She doesn't understand real business." I followed him into the dining room, where Sarah and her mother were already seated. Eleanor Sterling looked up from her perfectly arranged place setting, her smile as artificial as the flowers in the centerpiece. "Alex, darling," she cooed. "Sarah tells me your little company is doing well." "Very well," I replied, taking my seat. "In fact, I have some news to share." Richard's hand tightened on his wine glass. "Perhaps business can wait until after dinner." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "this can't wait. The press release goes live in about 3 minutes." Sarah sat up straighter, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Even Eleanor looked curious. "Press release?" Richard scoffed. "What could possibly—" He was cut off by the simultaneous chiming of phones around the table. Sarah was the first to read it, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "Google acquires Quantum Solutions security protocol in billion-dollar deal," she read aloud. "Pioneering AI-driven security system to be implemented across Google Cloud Platform." Richard's face went pale. "What?" "There's more," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. "Deal includes exclusive partnership for future development, with Quantum Solutions CEO Alexander Foster joining Google's advisory board." Eleanor's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against fine china. Richard grabbed his own device, fingers trembling as he pulled up the announcement. This is impossible," he stammered. "You're nothing but a small-time operation." I corrected him. "We've actually been anything but small-time for a while now. Our client list includes some names you might recognize." I started counting off on my fingers. Microsoft, Oracle, IBM. Oh, and Apple just reached out this morning. The color had completely drained from Richard's face. The mighty Richard Sterling, who'd built his fortune buying and breaking companies, looked like he might be sick. But the offer I just made to acquire my company— I smiled. "Sorry, but Google's offer was a bit more generous, and they don't make threats about accidents happening to their partners." Sarah's sharp intake of breath told me she caught the implications. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at her father. "Dad, what did you do?" The silence that followed Sarah's question was deafening. Richard Sterling, the man who always had an answer for everything, seemed to shrink in his chair. "Princess," he started, his voice uncharacteristically weak. "Business is complicated. Sometimes we have to take aggressive steps to protect our interests." "Aggressive steps?" Sarah's voice was ice cold. "Like threatening my husband?" Eleanor touched her daughter's arm. "Sarah, dear, perhaps we should—" "No, Mom." Sarah shook off her mother's hand. "I want to hear exactly what kind of threats Dad made to the man I love." I pulled out my phone again, pressing play on the recording I'd secretly made in Richard's study. His voice filled the dining room crystal clear as he detailed his plans to sabotage my company if I didn't accept his generous offer. Eleanor gasped. Richard's face, already pale, turned almost gray. "You recorded me?" he sputtered. "Of course I did," I replied calmly. "I've learned a lot from you over the years, Richard, like how to always protect yourself in business dealings." "How did you put it?" "Document everything, trust no one." Sarah stood up so suddenly her chair scraped against the marble floor. "I can't believe you, Dad. After everything, after all these years of looking down on Alex, belittling his work, you actually tried to threaten him into submission." "I was trying to help," Richard protested, "bring him into the family business, give him a real future." "A real future?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You wanted to steal my company, take the technology I built, and bury me in some middle management position where I couldn't embarrass you." "That's not the truth," I cut him off. "Let's talk truth, Richard. You spent years treating me like I was beneath you, like my work wasn't real business. But while you were busy mocking my little computer project, I was building something revolutionary, something Google values at over $1 billion. Thompson, who had been hovering near the door, made a choking sound. Richard shot him a venomous look. "Get out," he snapped at his CFO, "and if I hear one word of this conversation—" "Actually," I interrupted, "Thompson should stay. He'll want to hear this next part." I pulled up another document on my phone, sliding it across the table. Thompson picked it up, his professional mask cracking as he read. "Sir," he said, voice shaking, "you should see this." Richard snatched the phone, his eyes scanning rapidly. "What is this?" "A list of companies looking to integrate our security protocol," I said. "Notice anything interesting about the third one down?" His face went from gray to red. "Sterling Enterprises? That's impossible. We never—" "Your Tokyo office reached out last month," I explained. "They've been having some security issues, data breaches, system vulnerabilities, things that could be very embarrassing if they became public." Richard slammed the phone down. "You're bluffing, am I?" I pulled up another email. "This is from your head of Asia operations. Should I read it aloud? The part where he details exactly how vulnerable your systems are?" "Enough," Richard roared, standing up. "I won't be threatened in my own home." "Threatened?" I kept my voice calm. "I'm just having a father-son chat, looking out for your best interests." Sarah made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Eleanor was clutching her pearls, looking faint. "What do you want?" Richard asked, deflating slightly. "Want?" "I don't want anything from you, Richard. I never did. All I wanted was respect, not for your money or your connections, but for what I built on my own." I stood up, straightening my tie. "The Google deal goes public tomorrow morning. I'm sure the press will be very interested in what the great Richard Sterling thinks about his son-in-law's success, especially given how vocal you've been about my, what did you call it, amateur operation? You wouldn't dare embarrass the family like that?" Eleanor finally found her voice. "No," Sarah said firmly, moving to stand beside me. "Dad embarrassed the family when he tried to destroy Alex's company, when he chose his ego over his daughter's happiness." Richard sank back into his chair, looking suddenly old. "Sarah, princess, don't princess me," she cut him off. "I'm not your perfect little socialite anymore. I'm a grown woman who's watched her husband build something amazing, while her father did everything he could to tear him down." The next hour was a blur of accusations, revelations, and long-buried truths finally coming to light. Sarah confronted years of her father's manipulation. Eleanor alternated between defending her husband and begging everyone to think of the family's reputation. Thompson quietly excused himself, probably already updating his resume. Finally, exhausted, Richard looked at me with something like respect in his eyes. "You outplayed me," he admitted. "This wasn't a game to me," I replied. "This was my life's work, something you might have known if you'd ever bothered to really look at what I was building instead of just dismissing it." He nodded slowly. "And now? What happens next?" "That depends on you," I said. "Google wants to announce the partnership at a press conference next week. They're expecting the whole family to be there, showing support." "Can you do that, Richard? Can you stand up in front of the cameras and admit that your son-in-law built something worthwhile?" He flinched at my tone but held my gaze. "Yes," he said finally, "I can do that." Sarah squeezed my hand. "And after," I said, "we all learn to be a real family, one built on respect, not power plays and manipulation. The next week was a whirlwind of preparations. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday morning at Google's New York office. Marketing teams from both companies worked around the clock to coordinate the announcement, and through it all, Richard Sterling was uncharacteristically quiet. The morning of the press conference, I found him waiting in the hotel lobby, impeccably dressed as always but somehow diminished. "Alex," he said as I approached, "do you have a moment?" I checked my watch. "We need to leave in 20 minutes. He nodded, gesturing to a quiet corner. "I've been doing some thinking this past week. About business, about family, about what really matters. And I was wrong." The words seemed to physically pain him, not just about your company, but about you. I was so focused on what I thought success should look like that I couldn't see it taking a different form. I studied him carefully, looking for signs of manipulation. "Why are you telling me this now?" He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "Because in an hour, I have to stand up in front of the world and acknowledge that my son-in-law is a brilliant businessman. And I wanted you to know that I mean every word I'm going to say." Before I could respond, Sarah appeared, stunning in a navy blue suit. "Ready?" Richard straightened his tie. "Ready." The press conference went better than anyone could have expected. Richard played his part perfectly, praising my innovation and vision. When a reporter asked about his previous dismissal of tech startups, he even managed a self-deprecating laugh. "I've learned that success doesn't always wear a three-piece suit," he said, drawing chuckles from the crowd. "Sometimes it comes in the form of brilliant young minds who see possibilities that old titans like me might miss." The photos from that day would become family legends, Richard Sterling standing proudly beside me as Google's executives detailed the historic partnership, Sarah beaming at both of us, even Eleanor managing to look genuinely pleased. But the real change came in the months that followed. Richard's attitude toward me shifted from condescension to genuine interest. He started asking questions about the technology, actually listening to the answers. When Apple's offer came through 2 months later, he was the first person I called for advice. "What do you think?" I asked after laying out the terms. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "The technology integration timeline seems aggressive," he said finally. "I'd push for more development support on their end. That's exactly what I was thinking." He chuckled. "Of course you were. You've got good instincts, Alex. Better than mine in some ways." 1 year after the Google announcement, Sarah and I hosted a dinner party at our new home. A house not quite as grand as Richard's, but with a better view. The guest list included key members of both our teams, celebrating the successful launch of our latest security protocol. Richard arrived early, carrying a carefully wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked as he handed it to me. "Open it," he said, looking almost nervous. Inside was a framed article from the Wall Street Journal. "Tech visionary Alexander Foster revolutionizes cloud security." But it wasn't the headline that caught my eye. It was the handwritten note beneath it to my son, not in-law, just son, who taught me that real business isn't about size or scale or power. It's about vision, innovation, and the courage to build something new. "I'm proud to be part of your family, Richard." Sarah, reading over my shoulder, wiped away a tear. Richard cleared his throat gruffly. "Yes, well," he said, clearly uncomfortable with the emotion of the moment. "Just wanted you to have that. Now where's the champagne? We have success to celebrate." As I watched him move through the party, chatting easily with my team members, I thought about how much had changed. The mighty Richard Sterling had learned humility. The tech titan had learned to respect innovation. And most importantly, a father had learned to love and accept his son. "Happy?" Sarah asked, slipping her arm through mine. I looked around at our gathered family, both blood and chosen, and smiled. "Very." "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I never did get to see Dad's face when he dropped that champagne glass at his birthday party." "No," I agreed, "but I think what we got instead was better." Later that night, after the guests had gone and Sarah had gone to bed, I found Richard standing on our terrace, looking out at the city lights. "Quite a view," he said as I joined him. "Better than yours." He laughed. "Different, like everything else these days." He turned to face me. "You know, when Sarah first brought you home, I thought she was making a mistake. A scholarship kid with big dreams and no connections. I couldn't see how that would fit into the world I built. And now? Now I realized she wasn't trying to fit into my world. She was helping build a new one, a better one. He raised his glass. To new worlds. I clinked my glass against his. To family, he agreed. And Alex, thank you for not destroying me when you had the chance. I know I deserved it. That's not what family does, I said simply. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. We stood there in comfortable silence, two men who had moved past being enemies or even in-laws to become something we both needed more, father and son. The city stretched out below us, a glittering tapestry of lights and possibilities. Somewhere out there, other dreamers were building their own empires, fighting their own battles. But here, on this terrace, the war was over. The empire wasn't divided but expanded, strengthened by the very differences that had once threatened to tear it apart. Richard Sterling had finally learned that real business, like real family, isn't about power or control. It's about building something together, something bigger than ourselves, something that could change not just an industry but the people within it. And that, as it turned out, was the greatest success of all.